I want to bring up something. A lot of people in the chat are talking about Marvin Harrison versus the secondary, and I think
you're going to say Deuce Knight committing to Notre Dame. That came up in my chat too. Yeah.
Also great. I brought that up a little bit right before you hopped on, and I talked about Marvin Harrison before you came on, John, and obviously terrific wide receiver, the best wide receiver in my opinion in the entire country. So he could absolutely be the reason that Ohio State just completely dominates Notre Dame, or is the reason that, Ohio State wins. But it is a strength on strength. And I think that needs to be talked about because Notre Dame's corners, not necessarily their secondary as a whole, but their corners is the strength of their defense.
But Nathan, do you see how different this is? Look at the first two bullet points you and I have covered. One is Notre Dame feeling better about the quarterback situation, entering a big game. And then flipping it to defense, the first thing Nathan says is that we feel good about our guys on the back end. Those two things have never really been something you could say in any of these big matchups before. And again, it doesn't assure anything on the Notre Dame side, but it shows you that Notre Dame's entering this built differently than all those other moments. And that is a practical reason that is justifiable that Notre Dame fans are saying, I got a different feeling about how we're entering this one because the team literally is structured differently. And we're going to, that secondary, you got to have a good day. Make a play, tip a pass, jump a route. Like this is one of those environments. Whatever you could get. Now, Nathan, let me ask you this. What are your concerns or confidences about Notre Dame's ability to, one, stop the run, and two, be able to generate some heat on McCord when it's needed? Are you feeling good in those areas, or do you have some concerns there?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing in this game is to stop the run, because if you can stop the run and force McCord and the passing attack to be, I guess, quote unquote, one-dimensional, that benefits Notre Dame, because as good as Marvin Harrison is and the rest of the Ohio State receivers and different things like that, if you can, let's just say you hold the Ohio State rushing attack to 2.83 yards a carry or whatever. Hypothetical here. Notre Dame doesn't have to sit there and put 8 in the box and do all those different types of things. And you can shadow a guy like Harrison. You can probably count on Ben Morrison to cover him one-on-one from time to time. Because that's the thing, is like everybody wants to talk about how Marvin Harrison is the best player in the country, but good corners can play against good receivers. So Marvin Harrison might get his from time to time on Saturday night, but Ben Morrison also might get his from time to time on Saturday night. Like it's not an insult to say, hey, Ben Morrison can cover Marvin Harrison, or Cam Hart can cover, Fleming or Abeka.
You know what else too, Nathan? Ben Morrison is the type of dude that has like that gene in him of like, he's a guy who wants that national matchup. And Notre Dame has not had enough guys, especially on the back end, that like want that matchup, want the best guys in the country and want to be matched up on them and get physical and play that way. That's going to be exciting to see. Let me ask you about this, Nathan. How are you feeling about Notre Dame's ability to run the ball? Because you want to talk about Hartman, and we don't have the most proven wide receiver room. You got to kind of spread the defense out a little bit. And the best way to do that is to run the ball. What do you anticipate? Do you think Notre Dame's going to be able to build some running lanes to loosen things up? Or is this going to get tough and we're going to learn that O-line, we like the tackles, but maybe inside that's not as good as we thought? What are you expecting to see there?
Yeah, I feel better than last year going into the game. I'll say that. Yeah. Last year going into the game, you had a lot of unproven a lot of unproven players at the running back position, at the quarterback position, whatever it may be. Obviously we knew Buckner could run the football, but we all kind of like the same thing. If you can't pass, it's hard to be a good running quarterback as well.
Yeah.
Against a team like Ohio State. So, and then you had Logan Diggs and Audric Estime, who hadn't really been the dudes, right, at a running back position yet. And now this year you have Audric Estime a full year under his belt. I was telling Mark before you hopped on, I think Audric Estime right now is like, he was good last year, and I think Notre Dame fans probably even overhyped him a little bit, but he has more than backed up that hype so far this season. And I think he's gone from a really good running back to a great college running back this year. So I have confidence that he's going to be able to pick up yardage. I also have confidence that they have 4 or 5 guys behind him that various levels of, like what they can bring to the table when they are running the football. Jeremiah Love obviously can, one bad play by the Ohio State defense, and he can be behind you for 75.
Yeah.
70
Let me ask this, man. Do you think that this has been in my mind? I don't know why. As the build up to this game, I'm trying to find ways to be able to help. I know what Hartman could do, and I'm comfortable with that, but I still do have questions with some of those wide receiver dynamics. And I'm wondering, can Notre Dame use those other backs? Like Estime is that bus, and you know what he is. And I do mean that, Jerome, as a little nod to him. He's literally a bus, and he reminds me of that guy. But those other backs, Nathan, is there a way Notre Dame could be maybe scheming to be able to stress that Buckeye defense by having those guys out there where they're in a soft spot in his zone? You dump it to JD Price or Love, and they're just gone. Like, Notre Dame has more guys that could stress a defense than they've had in big game situations this year. I would like to see them use those backs, sneak up on them, find a soft spot somewhere, hit them with the screen, and they go. There's a lot to work with there. And the more those guys could do, the more pressure it relieves off those wide receivers trying to get open. Holden stays up the seam as a threat. What do you think you're going to get out of that? I want to use those backs and present confusion to Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this again before you hopped on, but they don't have an elite wide receiver, but they have a lot of really good wide receivers.
Yeah, and you can't guard all of them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if you have one elite dude and you get I get what you're saying there. There isn't like an A1-1-1, but you got a lot of good options.
Yeah, it's a different way to offense, essentially. I mean, a lot of teams have 1 or 2 dudes that are just really, really good. And I'm not saying that you're going to be able to stop those guys, because if they're really good, they're going to get by you. But you can game plan in a sense, right? Yeah. And against Notre Dame, you can absolutely game plan. I'm not trying to sit here and say you can't game plan against them. Yeah. But it is interesting when a team has 5, 6, 7, 8 dudes that can be the guy on any given play. Yeah.
And that is new for us. That may not be new if you're an Alabama fan or a Georgia fan or something. But for us, that is a very new feature. Usually it's like, how are you going to stop Notre Dame in a big game when you have talent? I know, stop the run on early downs and then bracket Mayer and then get a punt. That used to literally be the way to defend Notre Dame in a big game. Stop the run, bracket Mayer, get off the damn field. That isn't available this year. I'm not saying Notre Dame's an elite offense, but it isn't going to be as easy as it used to be to shut us down either. And that's damn progress.
So, John, most importantly, not only have Alabama and Georgia had offenses like that, but more importantly, on Saturday, Ohio State's had that kind of offense and those kind of dudes. So Big Ten, a lot of Big Ten fans, especially from places like Michigan, didn't like this. But when I ranked the wide receivers in the Big Ten in the offseason, Ohio State had the top 3. And when Carnell Tate gets going and gets enough reps, he'll be number 4. Yeah. Then you got Cade Stover in the mix, who, when they got him involved in the passing game, was pretty devastating against Western Kentucky. So my thought is less about the Marv Harrison matchup and more about where is Notre Dame with the second corner, the slot corner, those guys to match up against Ibuka, Fleming, Stover, etc.
And I think that goes back, Mark, to my point about how Freeman has been so much better at identifying weaknesses than Kelly was, because he identifies them and then he at least attempts to solve the issue. So when I say they brought in, you know what I'm saying, Mark? Or John, Jesus.
That was just funny to me. When Kelly identified an issue, he went in there and figured out who to blame for it and then never mentioned it again. Oh, it's that guy's. It was just funny the way you said that. The way you presented that was hilarious to me because it was so genuine, too. You weren't even being a smart ass. It was genuine. I love it.
Right. So Mark, hear me out for a second. You have obviously Ben Morrison and Cam Hart, who most people know. I mean, it's a really good college football cornerback duo.
They are nobodies, but now if somebody clips that, they're not going to know the context of me making that that comment.
But what Freeman
Thank
did.
you. I'll use that on a short later, Mark. Thanks.
You better not.
Thank you, Mark. Love you.
I'll send you the quote, John. But no, so what they did in the offseason, Mark, is they went out and got Thomas Harper from Oklahoma State, who is a safety slot corner for them.
Yep.
And there is an argument to be made that over the first 4 weeks of the season, Thomas Harper has been their best defender. He has had to, I mean, a lot of the teams that they've played, I mean, obviously I know they played Tennessee State, they played Central Michigan. Obviously,
but that's under the radar, Nathan. And you know that's under the radar because you got to know what you're looking for to see some of that stuff with him and the situations where it applies and all that. Like, but that is a really, really good point. Yeah.
Like Notre Dame has confidence that Thomas Harper can guard your slot receiver without needing the help over the top every single time. Now, obviously, you're always going to give your guys help when the situation calls for it. And again, like I'm a little not, I haven't watched a lot of Ohio State, unfortunately, yet this year, but I'm assuming that Emeka plays a lot of the slot would be my guess, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying that Emeka is not going to win against Thomas Harper. He probably will. And if he has a big day, then people are going to be on Thomas Harper, right? But what I am saying is that Notre Dame has confidence in Thomas Harper that they won't necessarily have to put a safety over the top with Harper to guard him. And if it turns out that the first couple of plays of the game or the first quarter, first half, whatever it may be, Emeka is having a really good day and they have to do that, then they might do that. But that was a huge weakness, at least after Tariq Bracy graduated. This is actually where it's different between Freeman and Kelly. The slot last year for Notre Dame was not a weakness because they had Tariq Bracy. It was going to become a weakness because they didn't have anybody after Tariq Bracy graduated to come in. And Kelly, in my opinion, in most years, instead of going out and getting that Thomas Harper guy, he would have been like, oh, we have Jaden Mickey. We have these guys that we recruited. Or maybe we go out and get a lesser guy who's not as good as Thomas Harper just to kind of fill like some depth or whatever. Freeman was like, no, I'm going to go out and get the best slot corner we can get on the market because he probably was or was damn near up there. And he's going to be our guy. And when we play Ohio State and we play USC and we play Clemson, teams that are going to have elite wide receivers, we're going to feel more confident that we could potentially go toe-to-toe with these guys.
All right. Now let me move this further down the road then. Like, I totally acknowledge and agree with what you're saying, and it does look and feel different than what Notre Dame fans are used for on the back end. But like Mark was talking about, how are these guys going to match up, back there? Then my mind automatically also goes to the pressure Notre Dame's going to be able to apply or not up front. And that is the other part of this equation is, if Notre Dame cannot, I'm not saying it has to be sacks, but if you cannot disrupt and hurry up this guy off the edge or whatever you're doing with pressure, it could be a long day for Notre Dame then, because then you're letting that kid sit back there and find those guys to get open. And every second that goes on is another second it's harder to stay with those guys. So that is a big question I have is I am not sold on Notre Dame's pressure necessarily all the time. You don't have that one dude that is a wrecker off the edge. Is Notre Dame going to be able to apply that pressure enough to disrupt this timing to mitigate what all those skill guys could do? Big thing to look for.
And just to accentuate that point real quick, in the quarterback comparison, if Kyle McCord reaches his ceiling magically this week or down the road, he could be as good as Sam Hartman someday. However, there is little evidence of him being as good as Sam Hartman right now. Now, he may go off and he can throw the football. He can spin it. But if that pressure is there, so no quarterback can be effective against really, really heavy pressure. It could be Tom Brady back there. If he's on his back, he can't throw it. But Sam Hartman has played how many games? He's probably the most experienced quarterback in the country. And he's played elite defenses. He's played in the ACC against Clemson a number of times. He's played other teams. It's not going to unnerve him. If somebody's hanging all over him, he can only be so effective, but it's not going to unnerve him between the ears. We don't know if Kyle McCord's going to be unnerved by constant pressure. And is that going to affect him on the next throw where he actually has time, but he's been feeling the pressure 5 straight drops. So this time he's kind of wary about what's on his backside or feeling more pressure than's actually in reality. So that's where I think 3 starts versus 45 starts is a complete difference.
Yeah. And you know what else is interesting to me about that is one of those guys that's going to be trying to fly off the edge and get him used to be at Ohio State. And that is that's kind of intriguing to me too.
I don't know if you saw this yesterday. John might have. Notre Dame had 6 plays all of last year that went for 40 plus yards. 6. One of them happened to be the first play of the year against Ohio State, right?
Dude, that is horrific, man. That
you
is.
Want to guess how many they have in 4 games already this year?
Oh, 4 times that or something. It's got to be
11.
Man, I mean, and that's what I mean when I'm telling you guys, this is all set up differently. Mark, I love what you said about kind of, there's no doubt to me, Ohio State, way more talent, recruiting juggernaut. Everybody knows that. But in this instance, just starting out, Notre Dame fans feel better about the quarterback. Most important position there is on the field. My question is, I don't know how to calculate how that levels out this ball game, feeling like I know they have overall more star talent and all that, but at the most important spot, I like our guy better as we sit today. How much does that matter? I don't know. But that's how I'm looking at this give and take. And I don't know what to make of these other games. Like, oh, Youngstown State, they didn't look good, and we want to forget that one. But then this one, they look better. That's the real one. That's why we need to play these games to get answers, because I don't know what's real and what isn't real and who's what yet. It's too hard to judge when all these teams play all these lower level teams before anything cool happens.
Well, and that's why the stat of having 11 plays so far this year of over 40 yards in only 4 games, that's significant to me, because that tells me that Notre Dame has an offense that can put up chunk plays. Like, I don't, Mark, I don't know if this was something that you guys touched on after the NC State game, but one thing I kept hearing after the NC State game this year was that, if Notre Dame didn't have those 6 plays that were chunk plays, they wouldn't have won. Yeah. Like, that's been what people have said Notre Dame can't do for 15 years.
Yeah.
And then they go and do it, and it's like, now you're going to discount an 80-yard touchdown run, or you're going to discount a 45-yard tight end pass. I don't understand.
I've been yelling at that too. I've had people be like, well, if you just take those 2 80-yard runs out of it, what did they do? And I'm like, wait, why am I going to take out the best plays of the game out of what I'm looking for? I'm trying to measure it. And they're like, well, take out that huge run. I'm like, why am I going to take it out? It happened. It was a huge play in the game.
You can't
why would I take it out when I'm analyzing the game?
And the most important thing is it means they can do it. And last year they proved they couldn't do it.
Exactly.
This year they're proving they can do it.
Yeah. Nathan, I want to know, what are your feelings on the interior O-line and how I think we feel good about the twin towers of tackle terror on each side. I think we all love that, NFL guys. That's a thought in my mind, though. Those 2 guards and that center, they are going to have a lot to say about how this game goes. What is your comfort level with the interior of Notre Dame's offensive line entering this game?
It's funny. Mark knows I brought a lot about this. I brought a lot of this stuff up before he hopped on, so it's awesome. So we're on the same page here. I think overall the interior line has been good. What the problem is that when they've been bad, or when they like that 5%, 10% of the time that they've been bad, it's been bad. You know it right when you're watching, which isn't good. Like, usually it's okay, guy misses the block, you see it on film. Fans don't even necessarily see it unless they watch the game 3 or 4 times, whatever it may be. But it's that 5 to 10% that they've been bad this year. It's just been noticeable immediately. And so if they can get that to maybe 2% on Saturday, then I think that they're gonna, they'll have a good day protecting Hartman and running the football. But then again, I mean, Ohio State's defensive line is probably one of the best in the country, and they could make a good offensive line look bad just because of how good they are. So we'll see. It'll be a good test for Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler specifically. So hopefully those guys can have a good day on Saturday.